2 days before Christmas, the knock came. It was a hard, official sound that cut through the joyful noise inside our home. My children were in matching red pajamas, their small hands covered in sticky cookie dough. The house smelled like gingerbread, pine needles, and childhood magic. I opened the door with a smile, expecting a package from my kind neighbor, Mrs. Ellis. Instead, a woman with a severe face and a tight, dark bun stood under my porch light. She held up a badge in a worn leather wallet. "Bethany Miller? I'm with Child Protective Services." She said each word deliberately, like she was dropping stones into still water. My heart didn't just skip a beat, it seemed to freeze completely. Behind me, I heard my 6-year-old son, Oliver, whisper, "Mommy? Who is it?" I turned and saw his perfect little face, dusted with flour, his bright smile vanishing as he sensed my sudden fear. The social worker's eyes moved past me, scanning our warm, lit-up home with its twinkling tree and wrapped gifts, and for a fleeting second, she looked genuinely surprised, even confused, by the scene of simple happiness she found. Ms. Gavel, the social worker, stepped inside after I nodded numbly. Her practical shoes made soft, ominous sounds on our wooden floor. She didn't take off her coat. Her gaze swept over our Christmas tree, the handmade ornaments from the kids, the pile of presents, the cheerful mess of baking covering the kitchen table. Her expression tightened, as if the cozy reality in front of her clashed violently with the words on the paperwork in her folder. She asked to see everything with a voice that was polite but left no room for refusal. The kitchen, the bathrooms, the children's rooms. My legs felt weak as I led her. Then, she asked to speak with Oliver and my 4-year-old daughter, Sophie, alone in the living room. I stood paralyzed in the hallway, my back against the wall, listening to my son's brave, small voice answer her questions. "Do you feel safe here?" "Yes." "Does Mommy ever leave you alone?" "No, never." Then, after a pause, his confused, innocent question, "Are you here because of Aunt Diana?" She said she was gonna check on us. A cold, liquid terror poured through my veins, turning my hands to ice. Later, through my attorney, I would learn the report's specifics. It was a lie, but a clever one, built from twisted fragments of my life. It claimed I regularly left the children alone for hours, which was an absolute fiction. It stated the house was unsanitary and unsafe, likely pointing to the normal, lived-in clutter of a busy young family. Most painfully, it alleged I was emotionally unstable and unfit, citing a single, very difficult week the previous year after I was laid off, a week of tears and fear that my sister Diana had witnessed and pretended to comfort me through. Diana knew my life intimately. She knew my work schedule, the layout of my home, my financial worries as a single mother, my moments of vulnerability. She used my own secrets, my private fears, as bricks to construct a case for my destruction. The investigation stayed open over the Christmas holiday. That dark cloud poisoned everything. Every Christmas carol on the radio, every gift I wrapped, every cookie the kids decorated felt like a performance, a desperate attempt to prove our family was whole while waiting for the axe to fall. Let me tell you who I am, because my sister's story about me was a grotesque caricature. My name is Bethany. For 8 steady years, I have worked as a grant coordinator at the Evergreen Community Foundation. My job is to be a bridge. I review heartfelt applications from shelters, food banks, and literacy programs, and I help direct money from donors to where it can do the most good. I am good at it because I am careful, organized, and I listen. I am also intensely private, guarding my own story closely. My older sister, Diana, chose a different path. She became a family court mediator. She saw her career as superior, more weighty and real. She often called my work touchy-feely charity stuff, while hers dealt with the hard truths of broken families. She wielded her professional title like a shield and a weapon. It never occurred to her that my private life, the one she looked down upon, could hold a power and a truth that could meet hers on its own field. The cruelty of her action was in its cold, calculated precision. On Christmas night, after I had finally gotten a terrified Oliver and a confused Sophie to sleep, my phone rang. It was Diana. Her voice was sweet, a fake, syrupy tone she used when playing the concerned relative. "Beth, oh my goodness, I just heard from Mom that you had a visit from CPS. My God, is everything okay with the kids? What happened?" The performance was flawless. Exhausted and emotionally shattered, I broke down sobbing on the phone, telling her how scared I was, how the worker had questioned the kids, how it felt like a nightmare. She listened, making soft, sympathetic noises, but offered no real help, no concrete support. It was a sickening victory lap. She had hinted at this before, suggesting over coffee that her spacious home with her lawyer husband was more stable and appropriate for children. I thought it was just her usual, cutting jealousy. I never, in my darkest dreams, believed she would arm the government and use it like a sniper to try and steal my family out from under me. The weeks between Christmas and New Year's were a slow-motion nightmare. A different caseworker visited unannounced, a tired-looking man who went through our fridge and cupboards. I had to gather piles of documents, school attendance records, detailed pediatrician reports, handwritten letters from my friends attesting to my character. The stress was a physical weight, a constant pressure on my chest. I lost my appetite. Sleep became a distant memory. I would creep into my children's room at night and just watch them sleep, tears streaming down my face in the dark, gripped by the primal terror that I might wake up and they would be gone. My performance at work suffered. I made uncharacteristic errors in reports. My boss, Philip, a decent and observant man, noticed the deep shadows under my eyes and my distracted air. "Bethany, are you feeling all right? You look like you're coming down with something," he asked with concern. I was too ashamed, too humiliated by the stigma of a CPS investigation to tell him the truth. I felt utterly, completely alone in the world. My one lifeline, my only source of strength, became my attorney, Carmen Ruiz. I found her name through a trusted legal aid network. She was a compact woman with a direct gaze and an energy that seemed to fill a room. She read the CPS file in her quiet office, her brow furrowed. She looked up at me, not with pity, but with fierce clarity. "This is personal, Bethany," she stated. "This isn't a random report from a concerned teacher or neighbor. The level of detail here is intimate. Who in your life knows this much about your daily routine and your history?" With a shaky breath, my voice barely a whisper, I told her about Diana. About her job as a family court mediator. About her subtle and not-so-subtle threats over the past year. Carmen's eyes turned hard and focused. A court officer, a mediator, filing a malicious anonymous report against a family member is not just mean. It's a profound ethical breach. It abuses the entire system. This changes the landscape completely. Trying to maintain normalcy, I threw myself into my year-end work at the foundation. Piles of grant applications covered my desk. One major file was for the Family First Legal Advocacy Trust, a well-regarded nonprofit that provided advanced training for judges, funded guardian ad litem programs, and advocated for court reforms. I was tasked with finalizing a very large, six-figure grant to them. The irony was a sharp, physical pain in my chest. Here I was, professionally directing vital funds to support and improve the family court system, while my own sister was weaponizing that same broken system to tear my family apart. I signed the approval form, my hand trembling so badly my signature looked foreign. But as I signed, I realized I had something, a professional relationship with the director of Family First. A fragile, desperate idea began to glimmer in the back of my exhausted mind. I called Thomas, the executive director of Family First, from my office. I kept my voice professional, my tone that of a diligent grantmaker. I asked him hypothetical questions about court ethics and procedures. Thomas, in your experience, what are the consequences if a court mediator is found to have filed a false or malicious report? He explained it was grounds for immediate suspension and likely revocation of their license. And what about judicial conflicts? What if a judge has a prior, indirect connection to one of the parties in a case? He said that even an appearance of impropriety was taken seriously. The judge would almost certainly have to recuse themselves to maintain the court's integrity. I thanked him for his time and hung up. The pieces of a possible strategy were on the table, but I couldn't yet see how they fit together for me. I still felt lost, navigating a maze where the walls were made of fear and legal paperwork. Carmen filed a formal motion to dismiss the CPS case. Her argument was powerful. The report was demonstrably false, filed in bad faith, and likely constituted malicious prosecution. The family court, backlogged and strained, scheduled a custody hearing for January 10th. This was it. The moment where a judge would hear the allegations and decide if my children stayed with me. Diana, of course, found out the date immediately. She called our parents, her voice a masterpiece of poisoned concern. Bethany is refusing to cooperate with the services, she told them. She's lawyered up and dragging this through the courts. It's such a shame. The truth will come out in front of the judge. Her confidence was a towering wall. She truly believed the system she worked in was her ally, a tool she wielded with expertise. She had no inkling that I was sitting in my quiet office, slowly, carefully learning how the gears of that very system turned, looking for a lever I could pull. New Year's Eve was utterly silent. There was no countdown, no champagne, no celebration. We were asleep by 9:30. The children clinging to me even in their dreams. On January 2nd, I returned to work, desperate for the distraction of routine. I buried myself in old foundation files, organizing archives to keep my mind from spiraling. Then, almost by accident, I found it. It was a master donor list for the previous fiscal year. I scanned the document, my eyes glazing over until they snagged on a familiar name under the Platinum Benefactors, heading for Family First, the Bennett Family Trust. My breath caught. That was my charity. The one I had quietly founded and funded with a modest inheritance from my beloved Aunt Charlotte, who had always believed in me. I was its sole benefactor, but I had insisted on total anonymity. My secret life, my passion project born from a desire to help other families navigate crises, was written right there in stark, official black and white. My hands went cold. A strange energy buzzed in my head. I minimized the donor list and quickly pulled up the public website for Family First. My mouse hovered, then clicked on the tab labeled Our Leadership and Advisors. The page listed a board of directors and a separate judicial advisory board. A group of respected judges and senior lawyers who provided guidance. I scrolled down, my heart hammering against my ribs. Halfway down the list, I saw a name that made the world shrink to a single point on the screen, the Honorable Harold Watkins. He was the judge assigned to our hearing on January 10th. This man, whose courtroom would decide my future, helped steer the charity I funded. He knew the name, the Bennett Family Trust, as a major patron. He had no idea that name was a veil for Bethany Miller, the woman who would be standing in his courtroom accused of being an unfit mother. A wild, impossible hope, fragile as a soap bubble, began to float in my chest. I practically ran to Carmen's office, the printed pages clutched in my hand. I spilled it all out in a rushed, emotional torrent. My anonymous charity, the Bennett Trust, the substantial annual grant to Family First, Judge Watkins's seat on their advisory board. Carmen listened, her initial surprise melting into a look of intense, focused calculation. She leaned forward. "This is a direct, incontrovertible conflict of interest," she said, her voice low and excited. "If we disclose this to the court, Judge Watkins will have to recuse himself immediately. He cannot preside over a case involving his charity's largest anonymous donor. Furthermore, it reframes you entirely. It shows you aren't just a struggling single mother. You are a significant, if silent, pillar of the very family law ecosystem hearing your case. It makes your sister's claims look not just false, but ludicrous." For the first time in weeks, I felt a solid, unshakable ground form beneath my feet. This wasn't just a defense, it was a revelation. We worked meticulously to prepare a formal legal disclosure. The document was simple and factual. It laid out the clear financial connection between me, via the Bennett Family Trust, and the Family First Legal Advocacy Trust, and it highlighted Judge Watkins's advisory role. Our strategy was set. We would present this not as an argument, but as a matter of judicial ethics at the very outset of the hearing. Diana would be sitting in that courtroom, dressed for victory, ready to watch me plead and struggle. She would have no warning, no time to react. The night before the hearing, I didn't sleep a wink. Instead, I held Oliver and Sophie close as they slept, breathing in their sweet, sleepy scent. "Tomorrow, this ends," I whispered into the dark, a promise to them and to myself. The scared victim was gone. In her place was a mother, armed not with anger, but with the quiet, undeniable power of the truth. January 10th dawned gray and bitterly cold, the sky the color of old concrete. The family courtroom was small, plain, and smelled of lemon polish and anxiety. Diana sat in the front row beside her silent husband, both wearing expensive, somber suits. She gave me a glance as I entered, a look of fabricated pity layered over a bedrock of sheer triumph. My stomach twisted. The bailiff called the room to order. Judge Watkins entered through a rear door. He was an older man with a thoughtful, lined face and kind eyes behind his glasses. My heart pounded so violently I felt dizzy. Carmen, a pillar of calm beside me, stood up smoothly. "Your Honor, may we approach the bench on a preliminary matter before we begin?" she asked. This was the moment. The point of no return. "Your Honor," Carmen began, her voice clear and resonant in the hushed room. "Before we commence with today's hearing, we're obligated to bring a serious matter of judicial ethics and conflict of interest to the court's immediate attention." She handed a slender, formal folder first to the judge, then to Diana's scowling attorney. She explained, in precise terms, that I, Bethany Miller, was the founder and primary funding source of the Bennett Family Trust. She stated that this trust was, and had been for 3 years, the leading charitable donor to the Family First Legal Advocacy Trust. And she noted, for the record, that Judge Harold Watkins served in an official capacity on the Judicial Advisory Board of that very organization. The room became so still I could hear the hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. Judge Watkins opened the folder. He read the first page, then the second. His eyebrows climbed toward his hairline. He looked up from the paper, his gaze landing on me with a new, profound curiosity. He looked back at the document, then at a printed list of his own professional affiliations that Carmen had included. His face cycled through stages of shock, professional recognition, and deep, grave concern. Across the room, Diana's attorney was flipping through the pages, his face flushing a dark, furious red. Diana herself leaned forward, squinting as if she couldn't comprehend what she was hearing. Then the name Bennett Family Trust seemed to register. I saw the exact moment of understanding hit her. Her eyes widened, her jaw went slack, and a pure, unvarnished horror drained the color from her face. The prestigious trust she'd heard praised at conferences was mine. Judge Watkins carefully set the paper down on his bench. He slowly removed his glasses, a gesture that seemed to magnify the courtroom silence. "Counsel, this is a clear and direct conflict of interest," he said, his voice heavy with solemnity. "The connection is material and unambiguous. I must recuse myself from this proceeding immediately." He then turned his gaze to Diana's attorney, his expression turning stern. "Furthermore, the court is now deeply troubled by the origins of this petition. An anonymous report, allegedly stemming from a family court mediator involving her own sister, strikes at the heart of this court's integrity. This matter will be referred to the court's Internal Ethics Committee for a full review." He lifted his gavel and brought it down with a sharp crack. "This hearing is adjourned. The petition is dismissed without prejudice." The final two words meant the case was over. The sound of the gavel was the most beautiful, resonant sound I had ever heard. It was the sound of freedom, of safety, of justice. Diana looked as if she had been physically struck. All the arrogant certainty evaporated, leaving behind a hollow, stunned mask. Her husband dropped his face into his hands. Carmen squeezed my arm so tightly it almost hurt. "It's over, Bethany. They won't refile. No other judge will touch this with a 10-foot pole," she whispered, her own voice thick with emotion. We gathered our things and walked out of the courtroom. In the sterile hallway, Diana rushed toward me, her professional composure shattered. "You? The Bennett Trust is you? This was a trap. You planned this," she hissed, her voice a trembling mix of rage and devastation. I stopped and looked at my sister, this stranger who shared my blood and had tried to break my soul. For the first time, I felt no anger, only a vast, calm clarity. "It wasn't a trap, Diana," I said, my voice steady and quiet. "I built something with my pain to help other people avoid theirs. You tried to use the system you know to crush me. You just didn't know I had been quietly helping to hold that same system up. You walked yourself into the one courtroom in this county where my life's work was literally on the roster. That's not a trap. That's the universe giving you the bill for your cruelty." I turned, took Carmen's arm, and walked away, my head held higher than it had been in years. The balance of power between us had irrevocably shifted. The following week brought official closure. The caseworker called me, her tone apologetic. She said the CPS case was formally closed and the file flagged. The anonymous report had been officially deemed malicious and unfounded. Simultaneously, Diana was placed on immediate administrative leave from her mediator position. A formal ethics investigation was opened by the State Judicial Conduct Board. The career she had prized above all else, the source of her superiority, was crumbling into dust. My parents called, their voices fraught with confusion and a desperate desire to smooth things over. "Can't you girls just work this out? She's your sister." But I had no comfort to give them. The damage was too deep, the betrayal too absolute. The bridge between us had been burned, and she had lit the match. At work, Philip called me into his office and quietly closed the door. "Bethany," he began, choosing his words carefully. "Word travels in this town. I heard about the court case being dismissed under remarkable circumstances." He paused, studying me. "I've also heard whispers about the Bennett Family Trust. I want you to know I had no idea. What you've managed to build, creating something that meaningful, while raising 2 children alone, while excelling at your job here. It's nothing short of extraordinary. He then offered me a promotion to Director of Community Impact, a role with greater influence and a significant raise. My quiet, diligent work, once just a job, was now being recognized as the testament of strength and character it truly was. Diana's ethics hearing took place at the end of January. I was asked to provide a written statement. I kept it brief and factual, a simple chronology of her threats and the subsequent CPS report. I didn't need to embellish. The unvarnished truth was damning enough. The panel reviewed the evidence, including the judge's referral and the CPS findings. They ruled unanimously that she had egregiously abused her position and violated the public trust. Her mediator license was revoked permanently. The decision was published in the State Law Journal, a permanent, public stain on her professional record. The sister who had sought to have my children taken away had lost the legal and moral right to have any professional role in the lives of families. In February, I accepted Philip's promotion with gratitude. I also made another decision. I met with Thomas from Family First. I told him I was ready to step out from behind the curtain of anonymity. We organized a small, respectful press conference. Standing at the podium, facing a small group of reporters and community leaders, my hands were steady. I spoke not about vengeance, but about mission. I talked about the Bennett Family Trust's goal to support families in crisis and to advocate for a more compassionate and just system. I never mentioned Diana's name, but everyone in that room knew the story. My private vulnerability had been transformed into public strength. My pain had found a purpose greater than revenge. That spring, on a Saturday warm with promise, I took Oliver and Sophie to the large, sunny playground near the courthouse. The building loomed in the distance, but it had lost its power to frighten us. The kids ran ahead, their laughter ringing out, chasing each other across the bright green grass, their long, joyful shadows dancing behind them. The deep, chilling fear that had entered our home just before Christmas was finally completely gone. Diana and I are not in contact. Some fractures are too severe, some betrayals too profound to ever mend. My work at the foundation is different now. It's personal, infused with a hard-won wisdom. The system had failed me, but I discovered I had been, all along, a hidden cornerstone within it. The new year taught me the hardest and most liberating lesson. Sometimes the quietest person in the room, the one everyone overlooks, is the one who quietly laid the foundation. And when they finally choose to speak, the whole structure must listen. I am no longer just Bethany, the single mother. I am a founder, a director, a force for change. And my children, Oliver and Sophie, are finally, eternally, safe on the solid ground I fought to secure.